What is going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be a bit of a different one. This isn't going to be my usual kind of day in the life or full day of eating. There's not going to be tons of fitness content. I wanted to do something a little bit different, a little bit creative, and talk about something that is a huge part of my life, and this is something that I've been working on over the past couple of years. And for me, it's important to talk about this because it does fit with other things that I talk about on the internet. So yeah, okay, like I do bodybuilding, which is generally seen as like this really tough sport of like pushing yourself to your limits and just going into the gym, talking about how it's a war zone and all that kind of stuff, which if that gets your juices flowing is great. And I've been in that phase and sometimes use that as, you know, as a driving force, but it's not a sustainable way of living is how I have found it. And actually one thing that I like to try and encourage is you don't need to be this hardcore living the life bodybuilder, or just generally, even if you're not into bodybuilding and you just, you know, train and go to the gym and want to improve your physique a little bit or improve your fitness levels, you don't need to be a Ronnie Coleman impersonator. So what I want to talk about is self-care and how we can use that to improve our training, but also just day-to-day life. I suppose the other thing that's also really important for me to address as well is why I've gone with the title self-care as a trans man, because there'll definitely be people that click on this and will say things along the lines of, what's this got to do with being trans? Why are you bringing that into it? I've had that plenty of times before when I've spoken about things on Instagram that are related to like trying to reach out to a trans audience, which is the first thing that I would say is that literally what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to address my target audience. I am trans, and therefore I'm also running a business that is literally dedicated to just trans people. So that's the first thing. The second of all, what I will say is that as much as everything that I talk about in this video is just self-care methods that anybody can use, one thing that I have really learned over the past couple of years is that there's important reasons for self-care that only trans people or other minority groups are going to relate to, and that is simply just the world being the way it is, the way that it likes to treat us and scapegoat us and all these lovely things that we feel on a day-to-day basis. And this isn't a boo-hoo, look at me, I'm so sad because I'm trans kind of thing, but I am making the point that actually sometimes it can be really fucking difficult to utilize these methods and be strong in this world that seems to, at the minute, just, it feels like doesn't want you there half the time, which is quite a deep thing to say, and I'm probably going to put in a trigger warning before this scene, but I do feel like there is even more relevance for it for us. So moving on from that stuff, I'm going to just enjoy myself with this video. It's a beautiful day in the UK right now, sun's shining, definitely makes me feel a lot more appreciative, so this is the perfect time for this video. Going to break all these things down into different sections and basically just how I am bringing joy to my life, how it's impacting my training. I'm on a photo shoot prep at the minute, so self-care is even more important because stress levels are crazy high, fatigue is like I've never felt before, so definitely there's a big training relation here, but also just generally feeling good is important for everyone. So let's start with morning routine. I have found that if I start my morning off badly, then the rest of the day seems to follow, which is sort of stating the obvious. And that's also not to say that if I have a bad morning or don't follow all these things that I'm going to just tell myself I'm going to have a bad day, but the impact that it has is huge. So first of all, I don't always have lots of time in the morning, so doing all of these things is not always possible, but I like to try and pick a handful, or not even a handful because that's a lot, like 1 or 2 things on those mornings where I've got to rush out or whatever. And then mornings like today, for example, where I do have the time to be a bit slower, I try to utilize more of those things. So the first one, and honestly this is the most important thing for me that needs to be done every day, is journaling. Can't even describe to you how much journaling has changed my life. I do basic forms of journaling, so literally just will write down like 3 things I'm grateful for, today's most important task, and then some days I wake up and my head is just full to the brim and I will write like a page down of just how I'm feeling. So that's been a really important thing. Another thing that I do also have is the daily stoic, which I take with a pinch of salt. It's not fully my thing. There are definitely some gems in here. I think it's just one of those ones that it's like, it's gonna be your vibe or it's not, or like me, just sort of in the middle. Like I say, there are some days in there where I'm like, yep, like that's great, that's really gonna help me. There's some days where I'm like, eh. But that's just one to kind of throw in there. And the other one is just normal reading. So at the minute I'm currently reading Jurassic Park. My choice of books are on the younger side. This kind of falls into the whole autism thing. I take a lot of kind of comfort from things that were part of my childhood and things like that. So for example, I'm quite happy to tell you that sometimes I enjoy reading Captain Underpants. And at the minute I'm reading Jurassic Park, which is a great book. I've never actually read this before, but I'm really enjoying it. So normal reading is also something that I try to do. A more kind of mature or adult book, if you like, that I read recently, if you're looking for non-Captain Underpants style books. I read 4,000 Weeks, and I have forgotten the author, so I apologise. But that book hit home. It's a self-help book that is about getting stuff done, but in a completely different way to how we normally promote, like, the hustle culture, if you like. So that was a really good read, and I think I'm going to read it again, to be honest with you. And then finally, 2 other things that I do in the morning, and this is one that I do regardless of how much time I've got, because it doesn't take very long at all, is I make my coffee, I put on some jazz music, and I open up the window and I just look out. I have not got much of a view at all, but genuinely just opening up the curtains in the morning, jazz music just makes me feel so good, and I just sip on my coffee, which is just one of those things that like just brings me so much joy. And then lastly, if I can, I try and get a walk in. Again, that one is not always possible straight away because I do have to rush out the door quite a bit in the morning, but any days where I can do that, even if it's just like 10-15 minutes, just getting some movement in, just nice gentle walk, build up some steps, is definitely something that I recommend. So morning routine doesn't need to be 3 hours of meditation and yoga, and if that's your thing, that's great, but they're just some basic things that bring me so much joy and fall under that self-care category. Let's talk training. So as I said at the beginning of this video, being a bodybuilder, generally that sport isn't seen as a lot of self-care, self-love. You go into the gym and it's like you are just ripping your body to pieces, kind of tearing it down, pushing yourself to the absolute limits, and that is 100% true. But I try to, even with my bodybuilding style of training, look at it from a self-care point of view of, wow, I have a body that I am able to push. I have a body that I'm able to move, whether it be quick, slow, whether it be like heavy, light. And I think that that's a really nice, important thing to be able to take into your training, regardless of the style, whether you're someone who is into bodybuilding or powerlifting or just going to the gym a couple of times a week to get some exercise in to feel better. It's such a joy to be able to move your body. And one thing that I've almost been trying to do over the past couple of years is view my training as, I suppose, a form of meditation to a certain degree. This is my time for me, and regardless of how I choose to use it, it's an opportunity to work on myself. Ooh, the post-workout Mediterranean style food just hits differently when it's sunny outside. Excuse the shirt off, but it's warm in the UK, amazingly. Bright, warm. Adds to the video because it's making me feel good, so hopefully it's also making you feel good as well. Let's talk about another part to self-care that's been a huge thing for me over the past couple of years now, and that's therapy. So, as I kind of documented online over the past couple of years, between 2022 and the sort of beginning of 2024, I was having regular therapy sessions. Now, therapy is something that I had been forced into basically as a teenager, and it genuinely never lasted more than an hour. It's one of those things where you have to want it, you cannot be forced into it. I have lived that experience. But over the past couple of years, there was a whole range of things in my personal life that built up and meant that I all of a sudden just had this urge to want to talk to someone, and was very nervous, but I was quite lucky in that I found someone who first time round I just clicked with, and that's the most important thing. Chances of you finding the right person straight away, I think, is quite slim actually, so I do feel kind of lucky in that sense. But that's sort of one section on its own, just talking to someone, whether that be weekly or monthly or even just a couple of times a year, is huge when you find the right person. So I am now no longer in regular therapy, but what I do is whenever anything comes up, I book in to see my therapist, and it's a real blessing to be able to do that and have that as a part of my life when I need it. So even though at the moment I am not at the cinema, I am just watching the TV at home, one thing that is really, really big for me in terms of self-care is film and going to the cinema. So I have a cinema pass which allows me to see as many films as I want every single month for a set price, and I generally go at least once a week, sometimes twice. I just love the fact that I can go to the cinema for anywhere between like an hour and a half to sometimes 3 hours depending on the film. Phones off, no distractions, just me and the film, and same with the TV as well. Like, I have the option to turn my phone off. It's not always as easy. That kind of want to look at my phone is still there, so that's kind of why I prefer the cinema, because I can't get my phone out. But I love film, and it's something that is a real distraction for me, but then also plays a big part in the creative side of my job. Creating content is a part of my job at the end of the day, and I am inspired by film and all kinds of things. And recently, I think the most recent thing that I was probably inspired by, not actually a film, Netflix, the new Ripley series with Andrew Scott was beautiful, like absolutely beautiful. Just everything about it was, for me, perfect, and I'm going to try and create a reel that kind of emulates that vibe, like the black and white, the old music. I love it. So cinema has definitely been a big thing for me. The bedhead beanie is back. I am focus. So, rolling into Saturday is the perfect place for me to go over the last few self-care points and then also wrap up this video. So, Saturdays have become important days for me because I have been having social media free Saturdays, and this has been a huge game changer in terms of just my overall mental health, if I'm being completely honest. One thing that I have learned over the past year is that if it wasn't for my job, I would not have social media. I love being creative, I love all that kind of side of things, and I do like the connection that social media brings, but there is just so much that I don't like about it. I think just mostly the pressures. And so just being able to take 24 hours where I just completely switch off has been huge. So making sure that I do that at least once a week, usually on a Saturday, has been good. Generally just taking breaks as well, like holidays, breaks away, is something that a couple of years ago I wasn't doing. And this was another thing that kind of came from therapy, is that I said to my therapist that I hadn't actually had a week off work since starting work in 2018. To which she was like, yeah, it's no wonder that you're so burnt out. So making sure that at the start of every year I sit down and I plan out holidays, and being able to take holiday, I do want to obviously stress, is a huge blessing in itself. But even if it's not going away somewhere, it's just about taking time off of work and switching off. And lastly, the big one is something that I came up with at the start of the year, and this is called Self-Care Saturday. So I schedule this into my diary once a month, and on this day I basically just fill it with as many self-care activities that I want to and can do. Now, these things do not need to be big extravagant things. You haven't got to go off for like a spa day and have 27 different treatments. I mean, you can do if you want to and you can afford it, but for me these things are literally just like having really big journal sessions where I'm not just going through the things that I already spoke about earlier on in this video, but I'm also like looking back over the past month and then looking ahead at the next month. Just a big deep dive. I will also go to coffee shops and just sit and read for hours. And the biggest thing that I make sure that I do on those days is that my phone is turned off. Not just social media, just the phone as a whole is off completely. So I go completely off grid. So my friends, my family, even they cannot contact me. And I obviously pre-warn them ahead of time what I'm doing so they don't panic. But yeah, if they need me, they need to come and find me. I'll just tell them, I'll make sure that, I let people know where I am. And that is the big self-care thing that I've made sure to do. So Self-Care Saturday, if you want to steal it, go ahead. I don't mind, because if it improves how you're feeling, then I'm all for it. So yeah, different one from me today, but I'm hoping that when I sit down and kind of edit this, I enjoy the creative process of it, and it's worth it, because even if this video helps a couple of people come up with some ideas to work on their self-care, or it just encourages people to just generally do more self-care, then I think that's a good thing. And regardless of whether you're some big screaming bodybuilder or someone who already likes more gentle activities anyway, self-care is super important, and it's something that over the past couple of years has impacted me positively in terms of my training, but also just generally day to day. So yeah, I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my Saturday, drink my coffee, take off the beanie because I don't need this if the camera isn't on. Thank you all for watching. I hope you'll have a great rest of your day, evening, whatever time you're watching this, and I will see you all in the next one.